passing a bylaw of this nature. I think our job as city councilors or as city government is to, you know, make decisions with respect to zoning, perhaps hours of operation, but how you pay. That to me is, I'm a little bit uncomfortable on passing a bylaw, telling businesses how they collect money from selling a product, in this case gasoline. I'm not comfortable doing that at all. And I think that goes beyond the scope of what we should and shouldn't be doing. And so if it does come back to us for a bylaw, I can't see myself supporting such a thing. If it was hours of operation and zoning, like location of businesses, that's part of our job. But as I said, not this particular idea. So thank you.
Councillor Head.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I tend to agree with my two councillors as well. I think it's you know, a slippery road. I know I'm not a big fan of that. But I'm glad this is going back, and maybe some more conversations are needed with the business owners. Do they have the flexibility today to provide or implement some of these restrictions? I think they do. So I would like to see that, I guess, looked at first before we make a over-sweeping change in the way we do business when it comes to our fuel. So thank you.
Councillor Edwards.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor. I don't like the motion. I don't see why we would refer it back to the police services, because I don't feel they will have the time simply to go ask businesses if they want this or how they're going to be impacted. They just don't have that person in place at all. So the motion to me is not a good one. I don't know where it came from. I don't think that was the motion from the police commission. But that being said, there is a need in the city and in the province for something to be implemented. Now, full services may be a different story. I don't think that some of the full service stations are being impacted as much, but some of them are. Some stations are taking lots of police resources on a regular basis on something that can be controlled. When we need police, and they've been called hundreds of times out to chase down people that have stolen gas, and we saw it in the report, it's pretty regular. It's a concern where we need the police resources for other things that are occurring. So it is a concern, for sure. People are filling up and they're bolting away, which can result in higher speed chases. We certainly don't encourage that in the city, but it can. If police see the car that stole it and they try and stop it and they bolt, well, that has to come down to a decision whether they go and they pursue. That's a different topic. But in the end, it does take resources to stop and to try and find that person, to follow up on that station that reports it. So if we don't want to implement it, and I'm not sure we need to implement it or should, I think there's research that needs to be done. Do we just do the police just say, no, we're not responding to these anymore? That's an option, because it could be prevented if you had prepaid gas. It's certainly an option, because I know the police are, they're busy. We all know that. And this is something that can be prevented. So it's a discussion that needs to be further before we implement a bylaw. Certainly think it's going to come down on another direction, maybe provincially. I'm not sure, because it's happening everywhere. I do know that there are some considerations. Some of the businesses that I've talked to say, listen, there's a pretty high cost if you implement this to a business that is already serving full serve customers. I think the cost, one station set up about $200,000. Well, that's extensive. That's a big cost. So, but I don't think that business or that I talk to are being impacted drastically. They're not seeing it because they're out there with the people all the time. So there's certainly research. I don't like the motion. I think that there should be some consultation with the businesses, but I think if we're passing that bylaw, we should be doing that consultation. I don't think we should put that back onto the police services, although that's who want it, for sure. So I don't know what the motion should be. I think we need to come up with something, but I won't support this motion because it just creates that circle and it's gonna go nowhere. So maybe after I hear a few more, we'll put a new motion. Thanks.
Councillor Zurakowski.
Thank you, Will, and thank you for sharing your thoughts. We've heard from members of the Police Commission, and it's interesting to hear that perspective as well. And what we heard is it may be an issue of resources, or specifically the lack of resources. And we always know that creating a bylaw that isn't going to be enforced frustrates the heck out of our residents. So I'm going to push a little harder on the brakes. I'm going to withdraw my motion. And I was going to save my other comments for next time we see this one, but I'll throw them in here tonight. I do not, if you take a look at other cities, other communities that have created a bylaw to prevent the gas and go issue, do you have to pay for gas before you pump it in Calgary? Yes, you do. In Hamilton, yes, you do. In Kelowna, yes, you do. But that bylaw was not passed by those cities, by the municipal governments. Those bylaws were passed by, yes, you guessed it, the provincial government. The provincial government. And so,
Doing anything.
I was going to save this for when we see this again, but I do think my colleague's right, that conversations do need to continue. That maybe some lobbying, some advocacy needs to take place within the Saskatchewan Police Commission themselves with the provincial government. Because if it's an issue here, you can guarantee it's an issue in other cities. And I think way more conversation needs to take place before we go knocking on the door of our businesses. So I'll withdraw my motion.
The honourable member from Ward 7.
Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor. I'm disappointed that it is withdrawn because I do think that the police services, I recognize that they are very busy, but they have the ability to do environmental assessment and help business owners that they continually receive calls, give them some suggestions about what could be done and what could help them, achieve fewer calls. Because this letter seems to be both things, services, like the police services, and speaking for the business owners as well. So I do think some time spent with some business owners, talking, the ones that have consistent police present or call, speaking with them, helping them design or do something or give them some suggestions, is time well spent. So it is withdrawn though, so, okay, I will move it.
Councillor Miller.
Great, thank you. I'm going to agree with Councillor Zurakowski. I think a letter needs to go to the provincial government. Is their responsibility to create legislation for this sort of thing. So then it's their responsibility in order for them to take responsibility for, I guess. Thank you.
Councillor Edwards.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. So my colleague to my left made some sense, as always. The one directly to my left. So how many gas stations are we talking about here? Does anybody know in this room how many gas stations we have in the city? Roughly? $20? 30? 40? Any gas? Closer to 20. So as Councillor Kilmer said, that there are people that go around and do the SEPTED, I think is the wording that she was talking about. and they do reports on it, and they have people to go about it, so maybe they do have the resources in that aspect of things. And you know what? Yes, I do think it's a provincial, it is a provincial guideline or a provincial duty and a responsibility to review it. But in the end, we need to find out how it's going to impact our businesses as well. So maybe that conversation could be out front of what the province is doing. So I'm going to change my mind on this, although I don't think I said I wasn't going to support it, but I wanted a new motion, but made some sense. So I am going to support this motion. I do know that policing want something done. So I think that we need to pursue something, whether it is this implementation or not, we have to do something. And that's what this is consulting. Thank you.
Councillor Tara Zepp.
Thank you. I'm wondering if the mover would consider adding after the word business owners and workers. And the reason I'm asking about that is if the police service are consulting, we often hear that workers at gas stations and convenience stores are called vulnerable workers, and they may have some good input. This is just consultation at this stage, but they may have some very good input, like Councillor Kilmer mentioned, about design or about how this would impact people on the ground.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Kilmer?
Very good suggestion. So yes.
You know, I'm just wondering, is this a permissive bylaw or is it a bylaw saying, yes, you're going to do it? If I were the co-op who has the major amount of stations in town and they serve, I'd be awful upset if somebody said to me, you're not going to go into that, get any gas until you pay me $40. I don't think they'd like it very well. And Tippy is the same. They've got good service, and there's some others that have. And I just don't understand why we would want to be so dogmatic as to push this onto a business person. I think they run a business, and I just can't understand it myself, but I guess it's coming from somewhere, wherever it's coming from. I don't know for sure, but anyway, I wouldn't support it, but I guess if we want to support this here, fine. Is there any further discussion? Prompt to vote. 6.3. 6.3, there we are. 6.3. Vote is now open. The vote is defeated, 5-4. .4, property tax abatements and exemptions. Councillor Edwards. I'm sorry. Sorry about that, buddy.
No problem. Thanks, Deputy Mayor. I will move the motion. I just have a couple of comments as I want to talk a little, just very quickly, about the special subclass that council voted on in 2018 as part of the notes in here. And the reason I want to bring this up is it has to do with care homes. And well, the previous council actually passed a motion in 2018 to reclassify care homes back to residential. So the provincial government reclassified care homes to a commercial rate.
Right.
And what that was doing was impacting our seniors. That was the seniors that lived inside the care homes were looking at a $100 to $200 a month increase in their rent. And the council of the day narrowly passed to reclassify this back down to residential. And I just wanted to touch base on this rate because right now, there's a small few select people in this community that are criticizing council and this council for not looking after the seniors and pointed out a number of areas where, you know, seniors aren't being looked after. Well, I just want to point out that this is just one other area where council are taking care of our seniors in the community and that we do care for our seniors. Because you know what? A $100 to $200 rental increase is substantial to the seniors. And unfortunately, the criticizer of that didn't support that motion, which is very sad. If they care so deeply about seniors, we supported that to help save our seniors some money. So thank you very much.
Councillor Ogrodnik.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Yeah, I wanted to speak on that too. It's private care homes. That's what we're talking about here, that we gave, we reclassified them. And I think Councillor Cody and myself were the movers and seconders of that particular motion to push for that. And as Councillor Edwards said, the one care home in particular, the provincial government changing it to a business, and if we classified it as a business, and I remember saying that we need to give they are a business in a sense. There's aspects of a care home that is a business, but it's also a home, a residence. It's a person's residence. That's where they live. And I remember saying that we can't compare this business of a private care home to a business like McDonald's. It's not the same, and therefore they shouldn't be taxed the same. And so at the time, as Councillor Edwards said, we made the motion and it narrowly passed. That's right, to make sure that these residents don't see these massive increases in their rent. And as I was saying, that one care home in particular, their taxes was scheduled to go from $55,000 a year up to $155,000, something to that effect. It was an unbelievable increase if we would have went the business route. And we, as a council, chose not to do that. And this, again, comes before us and to make sure that we don't do that to these seniors. And these are, you know, as Councillor Lennox Epp used the word earlier, these are vulnerable people in our community. People that live in care homes are vulnerable people. And whatever care home you're in this case, the seniors that we're talking about, they are very vulnerable, and we need to make sure that those private care homes exist, because there is the need for it in our community. And if we all of a sudden closed them all, we wouldn't have place for seniors in Prince Albert, and because we don't have enough public beds or apartments for our seniors. So it's a very much needed service, and I'm glad that we are doing, as Councillor Edwards said, making sure that those people are taken care of and are able to live in a place that is fair and affordable. Thank you.
Councillor Lennox Epp.
We, as a city council, do not require care homes to have that tax abatement flow down to tenants. And so what can happen is a care home can accept that tax abatement and the tenant still receive high increases because we as a city, we don't require that to be tied to the tenants. And that's something interesting. I think it would be interesting to see a chart, a long-term map showing how prices were affected by our abatement.
Thank you. Councillor Edwards.
Yeah, I certainly would like to comment a little bit on that. I was, along with a number of other councillors of the day, were consulted by a number of senior care homes that said, we have to increase the rent. No, they don't have to pass it on, but many were going to, because yeah, they might make a profit, but some of them don't make a major profit. And so that was the effort. I had residents reaching out to me and say, listen, my mother, who can't go and make more money, will increase. Her rent is going up based on this recommendation. We had a lot of those calls. And so Yeah, they didn't have to, but they were going to, a number of those, and I wasn't consulted by all of them, but I think within the whole bunch of the members of the day there, we probably talked to the majority of them, and the majority of them said rent is going up.
Councillor Rodnick?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Just to comment, Councillor Lennox, tell me what business in Prince Albert can afford a $100,000 tax increase in 1 year? Like that's what we were talking about when that changed from that one building that we were talking about in 2018. Their taxes were going up $100,000 in 1 year. And what business can afford that? And without passing it on to its consumers, and in this case, its residents. That's what would have had to happen. And so each resident in that one care home would have had to pay $200 per month more just for taxes, not for extra services or not for extra activities or anything like that. It was just to pay the city taxes. And that's what we were talking about in 2018. And so you say that they don't have to pass it on. Well, in their financials, I remember seeing the financials of several care homes when they contacted me when Councillor Cody and I and Councillor Cody got contacted, and we saw the financials. They're not making $100,000 in profit, nowhere near that. Think about, any care home. Think about your own home, how much it costs for rent or for utilities and et cetera, and food and your taxes already. When you add that up in a month, that's a lot of money. And that's what we're talking about here is a care home can't afford that kind of tax increase in a year. And so I'm very, very happy that we made a special category called business care home or something, or residential care home tax, and we had a special category in place. I can't remember what it's exactly called, but that's what we did, and we taxed them basically as a residence. And then there is that business part where the office is, et cetera, that is taxed at a little bit of a higher rate. So their taxes are not the exact same as a residence house, but slightly higher than that, because there is a little bit of a business component to these private care homes. And as I said, it would be wonderful to have spaces in our city for every single senior citizen publicly funded. But that's not the reality right now. And until we get there, we have to make sure that our seniors are taken care of.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Councillor Lennox, up?
So at the time, the provincial government did advise our city administration that we were charging incorrectly based on the provincial government's legislation, right? The provincial government said, look, you've been charging care homes as residential. That does not follow provincial government legislation. These are businesses. And so another way of looking at the issue is that these care homes were receiving an abatement for many years leading up until the provincial government discovering the error. And that is a different way of looking at the scenario, rather than this is a sudden increase. And it was surprising. It was something we didn't expect to be raised by the provincial government. But there are different ways of looking at an issue. And one way of looking at this issue is that these care homes were receiving an abatement throughout time until the provincial government advised and said, no, you need to be charging at this higher commercial rate. And then the city council of the day, majority voted and did determine that should be back down to another formula to bring it down to residential rate. So that's the point I want to raise. There's a different way of looking at that. Is it an increase or was it a long-term abatement prior?
Just one last point. Thank you,
Councillor
Mr. Deputy Mayor. I don't think it was an error on our part. I think it was a change in policy by the provincial government. I don't think we made an error in how we were taxing care homes. It was a change where they said no, care homes are now, private care homes now are going to be classified as businesses, is what I remember from our discussion in 2018. I don't think we made an error.
Seeing no further discussion, I will prompt the vote. Six point four, is it?
6.4, yeah. Go down.
6.4, there we are. There we go. This, you know, this thing doesn't work that good.
Voting is open.
It's open.
You have to tell them.
Oh, the vote is open. It's not? Closed. It aborted.
Oh, yeah. It says closed.
It's closed. Open again.
There you go.
I'll now give her a try now. The vote is closed. And it is accepted unanimously. We shall now go to reports from administration. 7.1 School Zone Safety Update, a verbal presentation by Evan Hastings.
So you just have to touch the black. Touch the black.
Yep,
At
add
the very top, a podium,
podium.
grab the floor.
There you go, Evan.
Awesome. Well, good afternoon and Happy New Year, everyone. This report is regarding the set speed limit in elementary school zones and areas within the city of Prince Albert. So before I begin, I thought I'd remind everybody the definition of a school area and a school zone. A school area is a section of roadway along a school that has school area signage but no reduction in speed, whereas a school zone does have a reduction of speed to 30 kilometers per hour. In the city of PA, these zones are active from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. on weekdays between the months of September and June. Currently, we have 17 elementary schools, 8 of which have school areas in them with a set speed limit of 50 kilometers per hour. These schools are as follows: St. Anne's, St. John's, Holy Cross, Arthur Peachy, Vincent Massey, Queen Mary, Riverside, and Princess Margaret. And although this review focused on the speed limit, it should be noted that there was also a review done of traffic signage, traffic paint, crosswalk locations, some other traffic safety incidents, and as well as a consultation with the Prince Albert Catholic School Division and Saskatchewan Rivers Public School Division, just to make sure we got a full outline of the safety in each location. The City of Prince Albert's current approach follows national guidelines set by the Transportation Association of Canada. We use the manual for school and playgrounds areas and zones. This works on a warned basis, so that means it uses data such as school type, road classification, fencing gaps, fencing heights, and school frontage to determine if a speed limit reduction is required or not. So we can score each location in one of 3 categories. That would be school area, where a reduction of speed is not warranted, school zone, where a reduction of speed is warranted, and school zone or area, where basically it's in between, and depending on the needs of the community and engineering judgment, we could reduce the speed or we might not. So a full review was done of each of the 8 school zones individually, and it was determined that 5 schools were found to be in the school area demarcation, and 3 schools were found to be in school zone or area. These 3 schools were St. Anne's, Riverside, and Princess Margaret. So an example as to why these schools were more warranted than some of the other ones. For example, Princess Margaret. The front doors are 35 meters away from 4th Street East, and there's a lack of sidewalks on the north and south side of 4th Street. So this means there's a higher chance that pedestrians are walking on the street or boulevard to enter or leave the school, and there's a higher need to reduce the speed in these locations. Additional to this, consultation was had with the Prince Albert Catholic School Division and the Saskatchewan Rivers Public School Division. Both divisions supported the notion by the Board of Police Commissioners to reduce the speed in all locations. A 4th location was looked at, which was Queen Mary. This was found to be a very sensitive location, as it was the 4th highest ranking school zone. The front doors are only 30 meters away from 15th Street West, and there's a busy, heavy haul route in front of the school. For this reason, we need to slow down traffic and make sure everybody has the time to come to a complete stop. So, in summary, the recommendation is to implement a school zone with a reduction in speed at Queen Mary, Princess Margaret, Riverside, and St. Anne's schools. The recommendation will cost approximately $1,000 for all traffic signage, equipment, and labor. So thank you, and at this time I can answer any questions.
Any questions of our guest? Councillor Zurikowski.
I don't have any questions, but I've got something to say. So I will
Yes.
pause for my colleagues if they have questions, if that's what you're asking.
No, you can speak whatever you'd like.
Fantastic. That's why I like coming here. Good. I'd like to thank the manager for all the work on this. It started with a big catch-all, and then he narrowed it down with some data, with a lot of conversations and consultations, and he brought to us recommendations that make sense, and I appreciate that. I can't argue with any of the recommendations. I'm not surprised by the recommendations, because anecdotally, living here for as long as I have, these locations don't surprise me. So I think there's value in these 4 locations. So, having said that, I will move these recommendations.
Okay, thank you. And we have further speakers. We'll have Councillor Head.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. And thank you, Evan, for putting this report together and doing the work of consultation with the school divisions, doing a full review. I'm comfortable moving and voting in favor of this motion. And I have to say, residents have spoke to me over the years about, you know, the uncomfortable feelings in my ward, in this case, River Street, Riverside School specifically, wanting to slow down, wishing others would. So happy to see this going to be in place, and we all be keeping our children safe in that area, going 30 kilometers. So thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Ogrodnik.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Just a question. Thank you for, first of all, thank you for the report. A question, has, and this might be something might not be popular, but I know, I'll say it, have we thought about doing this actually a year round, slowing traffic down in these school zones? Because many of them are playgrounds, and I know in the summertime, Brannion Drive, John Diefenbaker, and St. Catharines School, it's busy, and busy in the sense that kids are constantly running back and forth into these playgrounds. And have we thought about year-round for these areas, or just September during school hours?
This has been looked at, and it's going to be looked at further this summer. This report was mainly just to see which ones, you know, additional school zones needed a reduction in speed. However, similar to a lot of other areas, like you've kind of mentioned, Calgary, Saskatoon, they've switched to the year-round, you know, hourly 7 to 7 time zones. So that could be something that we look towards and implement in the future.
Okay, and have, I don't want you to say whether like the discussions that you had, but are the school divisions, the 2 that you discussed, and then have they mentioned that it should be year-round, or do you get an indication that they'd be in favor of that or not?
I would get the indication they would be in favor of that. However, neither of them stated that.
Okay, I like the idea too, extending it to 7, especially like when I think about ball and stuff that takes place in you know, the end of June and into July at St. Catherine and John Diefenbaker. It's extremely busy in that area, and traffic should slow down in that particular area, I think, and other areas, I'm sure, of the city. Like, you know, I just know my ward quite well. So, thank you.
Councillor Edwards.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor. Thanks very much for the report. It was very good, and I'm glad we're talking about this. I find it odd that every city is all over the map on this particular thing. Regina, I think, is 24 hours, 7 days a week. Saskatoon, I don't know what the heck they are, but I don't think they're 24 hours. But regardless, I think this is a good start. I'm a little curious to why Holy Cross wasn't selected in this. I didn't see the rationale behind it, but that intersection is a disaster. I'm curious to see maybe, what the argument was against that, or what we may be able to do to solve that issue.
It's so full of traffic now that you can't move more than 20 clicks.
It's crazy, yeah.
Some of the reasons for Holy Cross, just based on that like technical review, it does have full fencing. The front doors of that school are 50 meters away from the street, and there's a 6-meter boulevard from the sidewalk to the street. In addition to that, the playground is behind the school, so most of the children aren't near the street, and there's a stop-controlled pedestrian crossing at the location.
Yeah, that stop control is the dangerous part there. I mean, I'm glad it's there, but every time someone's turning left and another car is heading, I think it's south, and they squeeze by into that second lane and come near the driveway there, I cringe every single time that someone's gonna get smoked. So I'm hoping that we're looking to address that particular intersection at some point. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, I shall prompt the vote. Okay, where are we here? 7-1. The vote is now open. Closed. And the vote passes 9-0. 7.2, hiring of economic development manager. PowerPoint presentation, Craig Gittinger. Craig, podium still open.
Okay, well, thank you for the opportunity, Deputy Mayor, and I want to thank Council for the opportunity as well to revisit the hiring of an economic development manager and really get us talking and thinking a little bit about what we want economic development to look like in our city, and more particularly, what we want a leader in economic development to look like and what they will provide the city of Prince Albert. So just a bit of a history lesson. As you recall, back on December the 12th, you passed a number of motions, the first being to approve a proposed Parita model, which would be to bring our own economic development manager within the confines of the city, that we work with the city's solicitor to look at and reevaluate the PA-RETA agreement and make amendments as necessary, authorized to execute the agreement, and then more importantly, the request to fill the vacant economic development manager position being referred to today's executive committee meeting for discussion. I think before we have a real in-depth look at what economic development is, I just want to tell you and share with you what economic development means to me. And that is that it is a collaborative process between all levels of government and non-government organization that builds up the economic and social capacity of an area to improve its economic future and overall quality of life. It's not just new jobs. Certainly results in new jobs, but it's a lot more than that. And this definition tells us there's a couple key words in this definition that are really important and I think will kind of lay the foundation for today's discussion. And the first is that it's a collaborative process. So you won't find many effective economic development managers hidden in their offices, behind a computer, typing up research studies and keeping to themselves. It's between all levels of government. So to be successful at economic development, it is not only up to us as a city. We do need buy-in from all levels of government, whether that's provincial, federal, or our non-government organizations as well. And it's not just an impact on our economy, it's also an impact on some of the social capacities of an area. It's parks, it's playgrounds, it's facilities. And I think we as a city are doing a very, very good job in promoting and constructing assets to impact the overall quality of life of our citizens. I'm not going to go into detail of this chart, but basically what we've decided is to go with a blended approach to economic development where we will keep PA-RETA, we will keep those very, very important partnerships, but we wanted to get a little bit more control by having our own economic development manager to impact some of the projects that we work on, while also continuing to establish and honor the important relationships we have with some of our regional partners, our First Nations, our Métis partners, and some of our neighboring communities. Preparing for this presentation, this is a simple sentence, but I think it's very important. Within their defined spheres of jurisdiction, the government closest to the issue is the one that governs it. So essentially what we're saying here is that the closer economic development is to our city, the more impact we as a city have on economic development. So having our own in-house employee working for us 40 hours a week, 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, places the issue of economic development completely within our control. We decide to work with a consultant on a certain type of economic development project, or having our own employee ensures that they remain accountable, are immersed in all activities of our local government, and has a thumb on the pulse of our community. To be an effective economic development organization, and this is key, I say organization because it's not just a one-person responsibility. We need to be a number of things. We need to be effective and efficient. We need to be flexible. We need to respond to inquiries in an accurate and timely fashion. Understandable. We need to be a clearinghouse for information. Our data needs to be up to date. We need to build and foster new and existing relationships. We need to have the ability to apply for grants, and we need to manage a budget. It's a pretty in-depth job description for only one person. But we, as an economic development organization, in order to be effective, we need to do all of those things. And for a city like Prince Albert, it comes in the form of a number of leaders. And again, I feel that a key leader that we require to move ahead with this is this economic development manager. So I've simplified our areas of responsibility, not only for the manager, but also for the department in 3 key areas. And those are investment attraction, business retention and expansion, and finally, data collection. Starting with investment attraction, essentially what we're saying is we're assessing our community for investment readiness and encouraging new business to invest in our community. So what is investment readiness? How do we know that we are ready when that big quote unquote widget factory comes to our doorstep and says, I want to invest? How do we know if we're ready? We have to be able to answer questions. What does my community have to offer? What are the attributes of my community that'll be attractive to specific types of industries? What types of industries do we want to go after? What attributes will be unattractive? What type of investment do we want? What is the demand? Where is the demand? A key element of investment attraction is to be prepared to respond to those potential investor inquiries within a very short time frame. In support of this objective, there's a lot of investment readiness consideration work that needs to be done. Business retention and expansion. So we want to build solid relationships with our owners and managers that we currently have in our city. We want to collect data on companies and industries. We want to analyze trends, assist in problem solving, and look for opportunities of growth. Anecdotally, just a widely accepted fact about economic development is that 80% of new jobs in a community come within. They come within our current businesses growing. They come within our current businesses flourishing and creating new jobs. So we need to get out there. We need to talk to these businesses. We have to ask the simple questions. What are we doing well? Where can we improve? How can we make the growth of your company easier to achieve? I want our business card index of our economic development manager to be larger than any person in this building, because they need to be out, they need to be talking to people, and like I alluded to earlier, they can't be sitting beside or behind a desk. On average, a community will lose about 10% of their businesses a year. So we need to make up that 10% and add additional 1, 2, 3, 4% in order to continue to grow as a community. And finally, data collection. It comes in many shapes and sizes. I'm sure you've heard all of these terms: community profiles, readiness assessments, asset mapping, past plans, land inventory, all sorts of work here. And they mean different things to different people. It doesn't mean that we don't have this information, but we need to know what it's for. We need to know where it is, how it can be found, and we have to make sure it's readily accessible. Also key to these 3 points that I'm hitting: investment attraction, business expansion and data collection is that it's not just one person. We've got an economic development coordinator. We've got tourism being brought into the city. It's not the economic development manager's position to do these studies. It's not their job to do the research. It's their job to make sure the research gets done. It's their job to make sure they manage their team to effectively get this work done. It is the manager's job to implement it. It is the manager's job to determine success of getting this work done. It's the manager's job to get out into the community and show this information, to make sure it's readily available. They are the face of economic development within our organization, and something that PA Rita did not have was the resources to get this type of work done. And I think what it was difficult for our past CEO to get out there into the community because they were stuck or they were busy doing this type of work and they weren't readily available and they weren't out in the community implementing it and getting the work done. So with the additional resources of having a coordinator, of having myself, of having secretaries, of having very capable directors to lean on, that economic development manager will immediately be able to get out in the community and effect more change. So what am I looking for in a leader? There's a few key traits, key skills that I'll be looking for. First and foremost, long-term vision. If our leader does not have a long-term vision for our community, or commit to see projects through to fruition, economic development success will not likely be realized. So they need to establish where they want to go before they get there and aggressively pursue those goals as often as they can. Similarly, sustainability. Don't develop a plan if you don't have the capacity to get there. Don't waste your time on a plan if it's not sustainable. But if it is a plan that you want to achieve, get the capacity to get it done. Take some risks, ask some questions, come to this body and gain the capacity to get those objectives and jobs done. It might take some innovation, thinking out of the box, doing things differently. It will certainly take partnership building. PA Rita is a great example of that. We've got a lot of investors knocking on our door to talk about doing business in Prince Albert, and we've got some very exciting projects that are underway right now. And those partnerships, I promise you, will come to our benefit, not only now, but in the future as well. And again, networking. They need to be out in the community. They need to meet people. They need to meet our businesses. If someone asks a question about forestry and how to get, a certain type of timber, I need them to have the phone number and the name of the person to get in touch with so they can get those questions. And that can only be done by attending workshops, by attending conferences, by attending seminars, meeting people, and again, getting that Rolodex as thick as we possibly can. So, in 5 minutes or less, that's my presentation on economic development. My ask of you is, once again, to hire an economic development manager. And my commitment to you as a director is to try to change the culture of economic development in Prince Albert. We talk about planning a lot with the Department of Planning and Development Services, but I also want to be talking about economic development. I want to report back to you more often, and our economic development manager is a face that certainly will not be a stranger to these council chambers, as there's a lot of updates and a lot of information that should be shared. So with that, happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you very much for your in-depth report. Appreciate it. Councillor Zurikowski.
Thank you, sir. I want to thank the director for all his work on the economic development front and his work in this report and bringing us today. I'm pretty excited about today. This is a big deal. I believe now that administration and council are on the same page in moving forward on economic development. There has been some benefits in where we've been, and where we've been has led us to where we're going to go. So I'm pretty excited about where we're going to go. I do believe and have always believed that we need an economic development champion for the city, for our residents and for the corporation itself. So I've listened carefully to what the director had to say. I've read over the report quite thoroughly, and I am excited about the philosophy of the department, and I'm excited about the change in the philosophy of the city moving forward with economic development. So I have a couple of questions though, because what I've heard today is not totally reflective of what's in the advertisement. Or more accurately, probably the ad doesn't reflect what we've heard today. And I've got a few things circled on the ad
Please.
if I may lead those into questions. So on the fourth bullet of the ad, it says, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, implement the city's branding and marketing strategy through the preparation, dissemination of promotion materials, and so on. So branding and marketing strategy. I didn't see that anywhere on the presentation. So that causes me to pause a little bit. We have people in the corporation that I believe are involved in branding and marketing. So is this branding and marketing taking over communications? Is there a melding? Are there other changes going on internally? Because what we heard today doesn't reflect that bullet point in the ad. Can you help me out on that?
Yeah, absolutely, and thank you for the question, Councilor Zurikowski. Rewinding back to that first slide of my definition of what economic development was, and that's why I liked it so much, is that key collaborative. Because you're exactly right. We've got a director of corporate services, and we've got a communications team that's worked very hard on branding. We've come a long way in the last 5 years on branding, and no, simply the answer is no. We're not trying to take anything over. However, when someone comes to us with a welcome package, which we've been asked for on numerous occasions, I want to know that I can turn that information around. So the key word is implementation. It's not going to be the development of, it's not going to be the preparation of, it's going to be the implementation of. So it's to take that work that Kylie and her team has done and assist however we can in getting it out there, but it certainly won't be taking over any of the work.
Okay, I hear what you're saying, and it says implement the city's branding and marketing strategy. Okay, that's good. So when we come and look at the interest, if you weighted it, it's certainly towards economic, saying this out loud, you can disagree with me, correct me please, is more towards the economics of it, the economic development of it. And certainly branding and marketing is part of it, and as you say, lean within, in between the silos here. But it's certainly not the strength or the priority of the position of the advertisement is not towards the branding and marketing, but it's to be a part of the implementation along with other doers in the corporation?
That's exactly right. You're right. It's a pretty exhaustive job description. It's one that's existed within the organization for a number of years. But yeah, the exact same thing could be said for the implementation or the marketing of our website. We didn't create it. The economic development manager is certainly not responsible for it, but they'll absolutely refer people to it. Or if there's a section that needs to be updated, they'll certainly speak with Kylie and the director or the Department of Corporate Services on it. So I'm very mindful of the work that other directors do, and the economic development manager is more to promote the work that they do rather than to take any of it over. And I think that's part of the kind of the gap that I've identified.
Okay, thank you. It mentions in the ad the business licensing. That's a huge part, I believe, of the operations that all go on currently, especially during parts of the year, a certain part of the year, by the economic development officer. But it mentions in the ad that there's some responsibility to that. Can you talk to me about that relationship? Or the expectation, I suppose?
Yeah, for sure. I think in the ad, and I'm paraphrasing, is that we develop an effective business licensing program, something along those lines. You're right, we've got an economic development officer that currently is kind of the person responsible for all of our business licensing. We've got about 1,500 or so businesses every year, and we need to license them. The economic development manager certainly would not be involved with the day-to-day operations of a business licensing program. If they want to maybe make it more efficient, make it better, get more of the less time on business licensing and more on data collection or getting out and talking to businesses and more effective use of that employee, certainly they may get involved, but we've got a perfectly effective business licensing program right now, and I don't see certainly not in the near future, our management position getting in there and getting overly involved. It works
Okay.
as it is.
Okay, so this position is about breaking down the silos towards our priority, and ours, I mean, city council, and ours, I'd like to group in administration as well. I think we're there, and moving forward as a priority. That it's more of a using of the leading on the colleagues administratively to move forward. It's not about creating another silo and hiring additional staff to support this manager. It's about leaning on public works when needed be, community services, within planning itself to get the information in a timely manner or create it if the gaps exist.
Yep,
Okay.
you summarized it well.
Okay? Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Head.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Just a couple comments, Director. I think, getting in this role, I was always thought that PA should have an economic development officer in this building, but we had PRETA instead. And so hearing that we will see more reports and more updates from this position, because they do have quite the task at hand, and definitely looking at some of the attributes you're looking for, this is going to take quite the person to make this work. It should amount to better quality life for the city of Prince Albert. So I'd like to see some of that stuff come to fruition, I guess, and be presented here at City Council. So I'm definitely in support of this. I guess the only question I have for you: do you have a term position for this? Are we going to reassess after every 6 months, after a year? What's your thoughts on that?
Well, just like any other position, there's a probationary period, and I'll watch closely to make sure they're doing their job properly. I think once we hire this person, I'm going to try to flood you with as much ECDev stuff as I possibly can, just to keep you in the loop on what we're working on, even if it's just receiving file reports for information. But yes, there will be regular reporting to City Council and regular performance reviews by myself.
Great to hear. Yes, I'm looking forward to meeting this person.
Councillor Ogrodnik.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. I see Councillor is on as well. Your mic is on as well, Blake, just so you know. When I looked at this report and heard your presentation, I like it, and so thank you. And I like some of the words that you emphasize, collaboration, et cetera, important words. But when I look at this position, I see this position actually as not a manager, but to be honest, a whole new department called a Director of Economic Development, and that is accountable to the city manager and to council, because when I look at all of the expectations of this report, this is quite overwhelming for what I think is just a manager, and for you to take this on as well. Like, we've added bylaw to you, and now we're going to add this huge amount to your department. That to me, that seems like, I don't know, it's a lot, and maybe I'm wrong, but that's what I look at, is this position perhaps not being a manager, but being a Director of Economic Development, and being accountable to, as I said, to the city manager and to council. And if we're not happy, then and the city manager's not happy, then they're the ones that make the change. It just seems a lot of more responsible to your department is what I see. So thank you. Those are just my comments.
Thank you.
Councillor Edwards.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor. So, a couple of things, and from your report, I hear basically we need a mover and a shaker. And I think the city we need it. I think we're ready for that person to come in and be a mover and a shaker. It's important. So PRETA is mentioned in here quite often, and it should be. And it's not going anywhere. We're gonna, continue building those relationships, and that's important. But I do want to talk briefly, just the PRETA CEO had some challenges. I mean, drastic challenges. Hired in December of 2019, and if we think about that date, March of 2020, COVID. Well, that's probably the biggest challenge anybody could face. But not only that, so now she's entering a time where there was no policies and procedures, and that was the focus totally, to develop that. So, and a slow process, and it's gonna be a slow process, and I feel for that position. Like, Miss Charles faced some big challenges. So do I see, Prita built some relationships and had some successes. It's not going away, and it's good that those relationship buildings are going to continue to occur. And for the most part, the majority of that group will still meet on a regular basis, and I think those are important. It's important to note, and it was noted in your report, and I really appreciate that. As far as the city goes, absolutely, we need that mover and a shaker. I do note in the report, it said the ideal candidate wasn't able to be found. Well, there was some ideal candidates that applied. The group just couldn't agree on some of them. That happens when it comes to a group that's making a decision. There were some great candidates out there, and I hope some of them apply again. I think it's an important step for our city to move forward. Building, you mentioned it, very important, build and foster relationships, that's huge. And I think this person can go out and do that. Find new incentives, incentive programs, that's gonna be a massive part of the job. Incentives are huge, and we haven't done that very much. So I look forward to this person coming in, taking us out of our comfort zone, and finding new businesses to help them, and also helping the current businesses expand on however way it is. It's gonna take a knowledgeable person, very knowledgeable person, someone that's probably been in the business before, but I hope we find that right candidate, and I think it's essential for us to move forward with this position, so I will move the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Edwards. Councillor Kilmer.
Thank you very much. Thank you
Mayor,
very.
Okay.
Thank you for the presentation. It's a very exciting time. A thought that I have, I don't even want to call it a worry, but it's such a great opportunity. And Councillor Edwards mentioning the sweet spot of outside of our comfort zone, I worry that, again, using that word broadly, that what Councillor Zurkowski perhaps was alluding to, is that the job description that we used is one that we felt comfortable with and doesn't really encompass the opportunity for someone in Canada. And so my question my question is for Corporate Services, Director of Corporate Services. Where do we advertise this position? Where did we send it out to?
There's a handful of nationwide database, like the Canadian Municipality Association has a network that we put it out to, and some standard things like that. And then we share on our social media and LinkedIn and that kind of thing. But that's the limit of advertising for
And when we're
positions.
sharing it, is it what we see when we hit the city jobs, the job, and then more information, you hit it, and you see the job description written out? Is that how it's advertised?
Yes.
Okay. So I guess, we are going to be getting people applying, and that is wonderful, and I'm sure but I would really encourage us to expand that. Take a bit of time to perhaps pull the job description out, put it into a format that's just a little different about the great opportunities and the real special person that we're looking for, who is, will be very fortunate to come to this city and be part of what an exciting future that we are building, and that they can have their fingers in to build. So I guess that's my 2 cents, that I do think that perhaps just looking just a little bit differently would be helpful.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor Dion?
God, we have such a great opportunity to advertise with our partners. And I was sad that no one mentioned FCM. They have an advertisement that covers Canada, even SUMA. We might have somebody right in our own province that already has this job in another city and reads the SUMA. Oh, he is looking for a thing. So to me, it's got to be more than one. And sorry, I'm not a social media guy, so I don't support social media. Because if you don't read it that day, you don't see it. That's the problem with social media. You got to be on there all the time searching and looking, where if I'm a professional in that field, I'm going to look at FCM, the big advertiser, federation that we all belong to, SUMA, other organizations. I would have put an ad in that magazine, Municipalities Today, we all get it, or whatever it is. I don't know who produces it, because this isn't important. And we should not limit the pool that we're looking for by having a paddling pool. I want it in the deep end of our big pool, not paddle around, because this is an important job, and it's where you advertise. It's where you advertise is what you get. So if you have a candidate you want and you want to low advertise, you go her route. If you don't have a candidate, you want somebody like out of the world, you advertise all over the place. Thank you.
If I may, Mayor, to that point, you know, it's after tonight, I'll be a lot more aggressive with the posting. You know, I didn't want to forecast too far ahead, but I've got the Economic Development Association of Canada, I've got the Municipal Information Network, I've got the Saskatchewan, I got SUMA, I've got the Saskatchewan Economic Development Association, along with Alberta and Manitoba, that are all ready to go. I pretty much just need to pay the invoices and push enter. So, you know, consider it a bit of a soft launch posting right now, and certainly we can kind of revisit the description a little bit and tighten that up. But I think it's important that we get the posting out there and absolutely be prepared to answer those questions. So yes, I completely agree. It's got to be a broad posting available to many different jurisdictions and groups.
Councillor Edwards?
Thanks, Deputy Mayor, and I agree, the job description needs to be reviewed for sure. I think often our job descriptions or many job descriptions limit the person that applies. You look at those duties in there and it's like, oh my goodness, how can I be a mover and a shaker when I got to take care of 100 different items? And that right away sometimes says, I'm not applying for that job. It looks too ridiculous of the expectations. So hopefully we can review that and repost, because we already talked about some of those things that shouldn't be on there, you know, and they need to come off. And hopefully we, you know, don't limit ourselves. So thank you.
Councillor Zurikowski?
Thank you. I asked a lot of questions earlier. I'd like to finish by saying a couple of things, if I may. Number one, I completely am trusting the director. I think he understands. I think we're on the same page. I think we have the same philosophy and moving forward in what this city needs. And I also think the city manager is there with us as well when it comes to the expectations, because we've dabbled in this world for over a decade and we haven't gotten it right yet. So let's do whatever we can to get it right, and so that administration and council as a whole is as close as we can to be on the same page moving forward. And I'll take your 2 cents and I'll raise you a nickel, and I'll talk about the deep end for a moment, if I may. The deep end is not explaining to somebody where Cornerstone is 4 months after they move into the city. I believe we need a mover and a shaker, as my colleague says, somebody who understands our community, that understands the provinces, that understands this province and the opportunities that are left out there on the floor. And so I'm not interested in training somebody for 6 months or a year. We need somebody to hit the ground running that understands Saskatchewan and our community.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion? I'm not going to get in on this one, so I'll just leave it slide by. We shall vote.
7.2.
Okay, 7-1, 2, there we go. The vote is open. And the vote is now closed. Accepted, and it is unanimous. Thank you very much, Craig, for your great report and great reporting. 7.3, action item from City Council Executive Committee and Budget Committee. Terry, excuse me, Terry Mercer.
Okay, I'm just going to make a small statement here. The attached report and document reflects all the open action items derived from City Council, Executive, and Budget Committee meetings as of December 12, 2022, along with requests to either extend the deadline date or close the item. At this time, council could direct if they wish to go through each item on the listing, or members of council can bring forward the specific items by identifying the reference number. So just let me know how you want to proceed.
Any discussion? Can we have a motion? Councillor Edwards?
I think we should go through each item.
Sure, we can go through each item, absolutely. That's what we're here for.
Okay.
Start it off.
We'll just go to the city manager item. Does anybody have any issues with that? Page 101, it's open action item, city manager's office, CM1, so it's on the attachments, city manager's office. So this was, yeah.
Any discussion on that? Next item? Oh.
Okay.
Concealer Zurakowski.
Yes, sir. So, yeah, the update from the Communications Subcommittee, July 5th. And the only thing I'd like to say here is I would like to put a plug in for elevating the Communications Subcommittee by members of council and administration. I think there's been a lot of valuable work done through the Management Committee, and I think we've seen the work that the subcommittee has done. And I think there's a lot of value that's been done there. Some that members of council haven't seen because it hasn't made it to council. But I think if we have a full-out committee, communications committee, I think there's a lot of value there. So I'll pause there, and that's all I'm going to say on that.
Okay, anything further? Next item?
So that's corporate services. So there's two items there.
Oh, no, that's fine. I could do my own damn thing.
No issues?
Any discussion on this item? Sorry there. Councillor Ogrodnik?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Yeah, with the public abuse policy and procedure, I'm disappointed that it's taking so long. When it came forward in the fall, I was told that they just needed a couple more months to get it completed. And would we rather have it complete or incomplete? And now we're looking at over a year later, and we still don't have anything in place. And so I just want to say I'm very disappointed that something that I think is extremely important for our employees as well as the elected, and it's taking over a year for us to get something in place. Very disappointing that it's being delayed again.
Thank you. Is there any response? Okay, then we'll go to the next item.
So that's community services, and there is 7 items.
That'll never happen. Councillor Grodnick, sorry.
Yeah, another one, the Lacole Falls, like, I don't think it should close. We brought this forward and then COVID hit, and so we were unable to make a site visit and further expand. So I think I think that needs to be changed. Let's not close it. So yeah, I'd like to make a motion that CS7 be, you know, reopened, and that within 3 months, well, not right now, but we'd have to say by July, we should have a site visit, Mayor Dion, myself, and the appropriate people from senior management, and then move forward on what we should do or not do with this particular site.
No, there's a motion.
You know, Lacole Falls is an important, very important historical event for the city of Prince Albert. And we view, some people view it as this major mistake by council. And the initial cost to build a dam was $1 million. And then it escalated. Well, why did it escalate? Was because the federal government of the day put restrictions on the development, saying that we now have to have a lock system in place. And that's what caused the bankruptcy of that particular project, was the federal government insisting that a lock system be put in place. And that lock system, if you go out there, is partially built. And then of course, money ran out. And the only reason that lock system was to be put in place was because at that particular time, shipping was taking place up and down the river. The old train bridge would turn so that these big ships can go up and down. And then 1914 hits and this war breaks out. And the entire economy of not only Prince Albert, Saskatchewan, but Canada and the Allied Expeditionary Forces, or the Triple Entente as they were known, geared their economy towards the war effort. And everything else stopped.
It's your history lesson.
And that's what happened. Well, no, but people are comparing this project, that it was a major fiasco of city council of the day. And that is nothing but a bunch of BS. Prince Albert people against BS. That's what it is. And I'm angry with this, because narcissists like to rewrite history to fit their own personal agenda. And that's what this is about. And so this project has historical significance for our city. And people need to know history and not rewrite history. And I'll challenge anybody to debate me on these kinds of issues. I know what I'm talking about. And I'm fuming right now. But we can't let this die and close this file. And so my motion says be extended, that a site visit be scheduled by July 1st, and that recommendations proceed on which direction to go. So that gives us June, May and June, to visit the site and then proceed with however we want to proceed with this, and then to write the correct history of why this project failed. That will be my mandate and my goal in doing this. The only person, too, that was opposed to this actually was the editor of the Daily Herald at that particular time. He was the one that advised the city not to go in this direction. But everybody, the entire community, residents, business, and advisory groups in the community were all in favor of this. So it wasn't only city council. Thank you.
Councillor Edwards?
It's always great to hear the truth. It's always good to hear the truth about history, and Councillor Ogrodnik brings that to us. It's always good to hear it rather than hearing the term Lacole Falls and being talked about all willy-nilly. Doesn't matter whether you know jack about it. Thank you for that. I really appreciate it. It's good to hear. And it's such an important part of Prince Albert history, and I agree completely that we need to follow through with that motion and move forward on bringing this to attention in Prince Albert properly, know the exact history, and making it a visiting site somehow, whatever that brings up. So I have another, I don't know, do we need to vote on that motion?
Is that a separate vote or is it part of it?
No, I think what we'll do is we'll go through the whole thing and then we'll do them all in one motion.
Yeah, if
That's okay with you?
that's okay.
Fine with me. So
Good? Is that okay?
Yeah, that.
All right. Then we shall, are you done?
Yeah, I just had a,
I don't know.
Go ahead, Councillor Edwards.
Yeah, CS4, Chesterfest. Did Chesterfest not happen this year? Did that?
Yes, it did.
It did. But then it says it has advised that Chesterfest is not going ahead.
But that's, I think, in a certain location, is it not?
At Little Red River Park.
Yeah.
It is recommended that the investment required to host festivals and events, okay, that's all Little Red, okay. Then I don't need to talk about that. That's good.
Okay. All right, next item.
Next item?
I'm Councillor Lennox up.
Thank you. Yeah, maybe just a question for the director here. Is the intention that we're saying that Chesterfest, I guess I should say my question. My question is, if Chesterfest wanted to use Little Red River Park for for next year or the year after, you know, should we not be pursuing this motion to plan for that?
I'm sorry. Yes, Jody.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To Councillor Lennox Epp's inquiry. So what we are suggesting is that we still do the work, but we're suggesting by doing so that we amalgamate with item CS6, or sorry, CS5, that should say CS5, where we're talking about the Little Red River Park stages of development. So that it can be considered amongst all the other improvements that are in front of us within the master plan out there. So we're not suggesting that we don't do the work, we're suggesting that still occurs and that we bring it forward in the next Little Red River Park report.
And following that process, you don't think that will shy the organizers away from approaching administration or city council for the Little Red River Park? We're not saying no or shutting that down.
Right, yeah, so the communication with the department and the event organizers are still underway. So we're just working with the updates they're providing us with the status of their event. And certainly if there's the opportunity to host it at Little Red River Park in the future, we'll be open to that. So that work is continuing.
And,
That's correct, under item CS5.
and if I
what
could
we're
ask,
suggesting.
so in this document, it says Chesterfest not going ahead. That just means it wasn't going ahead at Little Red River Park
Correct.
site last year.
Correct,
Thank you.
yep.
Okay. Next item.
That's financial services. Financial services. That's 6 items for financial services.
Councillor Zerkowski.
FS1, the housing projects. I wonder if our member on the housing board can help us out and if we're able to get any of our questions answered. I see there's no details on the update. A reason to extend, I think it's February 14th, which is appropriately named Valentine's Day for those husbands that don't know, but I wonder if Councillor Miller can, or are we saving that till then? All right. Option B then.
Next item.
Fire, there's 1 item.
Fire.
No issues.
Okay.
And planning
Okay.
and development services. There is 6 items on that list.
Okay.
Nothing. And then public works, there's 5 items.
Tara Lennox up.
Thank you. Question, I think for the city clerk, there's something that I don't see on any of these documents, and I think it would be considered an action item, but maybe you can enlighten me. But when we were voting on the Truth and Reconciliation, different numbered items, one motion that did pass was that the city pursue funding Indigenous sports and also the Indigenous games. And I haven't yet seen that come back at kind of implementation. The motion passed, the motion was concluded, but in terms of implementing that motion that passed, and I thought I would see it here.
I'm not quite certain. I'd have to review the issue tracking items. Not off the top of my head, I'm not sure.
And you don't need a motion to take a look for that?
No, we
Okay.
can just have a look.
I appreciate
Yeah.
that.
Okay.
That's it? Okay, then we will now have a motion then to adopt.
I'll make that motion.
Moved by,
Oh,
Oh, he did
Councillor-
already?
he already made the motion. Yeah. We now just have to go to vote, eh? Oh, where the hell are we here?
Oh, it's 7.3.
7.3, there we are.
Ready to vote, and just wait a second, because it just takes a second.
They are now open.
The vote is now open. And closed. And accepted. We shall then go to 7.4, privacy, confidentiality, and access to information policies. City clerk.
Just tap the black, tap the black.
Oh, she's going up there. Add.
Podium. Okay. All right.
City
so,
clerk is on.
Hello, hello. So the purpose of the the Local Authority Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act, known as LaFoIP, is in regards to right of access to documents of the city and a right of privacy of personal information held by the city. Since the act was first introduced 30 years ago, further amendments have been made to ensure that administrative safeguards were in place to protect confidential information related to records in the city's control and authority. City Council initially approved the Freedom of Information and Access to Information policy in 2016, with subsequent amendments in 2018, 19, and 2020. The current policy addresses both privacy and access to information and guides employees and members of council regarding disclosing information. The current policy requires more details regarding the city's responsibility of confidential information. Therefore, at this time, administration is requesting that the current policy be separated into two distinct policies. Firstly, the privacy and confidentiality policy addresses the collection, use, and security of confidential information. This policy includes requirements for privacy impact assessments, known as PIAs, to be completed when new or changed city programs or services are introduced that involve personal or confidential information. The PIA process will identify the risks associated with sharing or using the private information. The policy also includes a process to deal with privacy breaches. Secondly, the access to information policy focuses more on the city's commitment to be transparent and provide an ability to the public on their right of access of city records and information. This policy is also being renamed to identify the intent more clearly. Following consideration and approval of the policies, administration will be undertaking a further review of current policies that affect personal and confidential information and will bring forward consideration of those amendments at a later date. That's it. Thank you, and I'll answer any questions.
Do we have any questions? Councillor Dion.
I'll move the
Mayor Dion.
recommendation. And I got demoted? Okay.
Councillor Head.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Just a question, I guess. Sorry, Terry, before you run away. I didn't notice a massive amount of change. One of the documents just had looks like a clarifying and then moving the body of some of the language into the new policy. Just, so is there any massive changes, any difference that the public can expect with this policy at all?
No, not really major changes in the access to information policy. That was a lot of housekeeping.
Yeah.
Like you said, a lot of things were changed over into the privacy and confidentiality policy. The biggest change is just allowing the privacy impact assessments to be formalized and privacy breaches to be formalized. So the access to information has already been in place. We utilize that process, so not much has changed in there. So it's really just identifying that the two policies should be separated because they are dealing with two different things, yeah.
No, that's what I thought, and I guess I wanted to clarify that this evening, because I know we're going to vote on it again, but that this isn't limiting or disqualifying or doing any of those things. People want information, they're still going to get it.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, we shall prompt the vote. Point four, there we go. Vote is now open. Okay. And closed. And we accept. And it is unanimous, other than one guy who's left us. Okay, we shall have one more motion. Councillor Kilmer.
Adjourn.
Councillor Kilmer. Probably 6:15, 6:15, is that good enough? Is that good enough? What, you guys make the decision, don't matter to me. 30 minutes? 30 minutes, okay. 6:15, we'll come back. Okay, I'm gonna prompt the vote here. Where's the adjournment on this? Goddamn. Vote is open. And vote carries. We stand adjourned till 6:15.